The heart of a saint, even a king like David, is not immune to the crushing weight of spiritual darkness. Psalm 13 opens not with a declaration of faith, but with raw, desperate questions hurled into the seeming silence of heaven. How long, O Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? This is not the language of polite, Sunday morning prayer. This is the language of anguish, the cry of a man who feels utterly abandoned by the one whose presence is his life. The repetition of "how long" is like pounding a fist on a locked door. It reveals a soul stretched to its breaking point. Time itself becomes an enemy. Each moment deepens the wound of God's perceived absence. This initial cry is profoundly important. It gives us permission to be utterly honest with God. David does not pretend. He does not wrap his pain in pious platitudes. He does not feign a strength he does not possess. He lays the full, unvarnished reality of his despair at God's feet. The feeling of being forgotten is perhaps the deepest terror a believer can face. It is a cosmic loneliness. The anchor of one's existence comes loose. David's question is not a theological query, but a sob of existential dread. He feels God is hiding, turning his face away, a withdrawal of favor in the Old Testament. The psalmist's pain is not only external or relational, it is deeply internal, a civil war raging within his own soul. He continues his lament in verse 2. How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Here, the focus shifts from the perceived silence of God to the relentless noise within his own mind. He is taking counsel in his soul, exhausting, circular torment of anxiety, worry, strategic scheming trapped in one's own head, replaying fears, rehearsing arguments, trying to reason one's way out of a sorrow that logic cannot touch. No relief. Only sorrow in my heart all the day. This is painfully familiar to the modern soul, the soundtrack of depression, the endless loop of anxiety. David is not just sad, he's exhausted from trying to manage his own sadness. His mind, meant for wisdom and peace, has become a torture chamber. He is his own counselor. The advice is bleak. When God's face is hidden. In the midst of this suffocating despair, David makes a decisive turn. The momentum of the psalm shifts dramatically in verses 3 and 4. The questions of how long cease. A direct, urgent appeal is made. Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. After articulating the depths of his pain, David now channels his energy into a specific petition. He stops asking about God. He starts asking from God. He commands his own soul to look away from the problems. He commands it to look toward the problem solver. The words, consider and answer me, are a bold summons. A plea for God to turn his attention back to his suffering servant. It is a prayer for engagement, for the end of the divine silence. The specific request is profoundly beautiful. Light up my eyes. Renewed life, vitality, hope. Eyes dimmed by sorrow and weeping are a sign of weakness and impending death. My life force is draining out of me. O God, restore the light to my eyes before I am completely extinguished. The transition to verse 5 is not merely a change in tone, it is a fundamental reorientation of the soul. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. David does not say, but now I feel better. But now my circumstances have changed. The change is internal and is based on a truth that exists outside of him. He actively redirects his trust. He remembers God's he said covenant-keeping, loyal, unfailing love. This is not a vague, sentimental affection, but a sworn commitment. David chooses to believe that God's covenant love is more real than his present suffering. This act of trusting in God's steadfast love is the direct cause of the joy that follows. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. Psalm 13 is more than just a beautiful poem. It is a divine roadmap for navigating the seasons of spiritual desolation. It provides a God-approved pattern for how to handle our pain and move from honest despair to authentic hope. The first great lesson is the permission it grants for radical honesty. We are not called to pretend that everything is fine when it is not. God is not fragile. He can handle our questions, our anger, our tears. Voicing our lament, as David does with his fourfold how long, is not a sign of weak faith but of a real relationship. It is an act of faith to bring our ugliest feelings to God rather than turning away from him in our pain. True worship can include crying out from the depths. Second, the psalm teaches us to be specific in our petitions. After pouring out his general despair, David focuses his prayer on a clear request. Consider and answer me. Light up my eyes. Vague prayers often arise from vague faith. By naming our need, renewed hope, protection from shame, God to act for his own glory, we clarify our dependence on him. This moves us from being passive victims to active participants in the fight for faith. We are to ask, seek, and knock, making our specific requests known to God, trusting that he is a father who loves to give good gifts to his children, the primary gift being the light of his own presence.